Hello everyone, my name is Jimmy and welcome to The Last Lap. And in today's video we're going to be breaking down the Bubba Wallace penalty along with getting you guys ready for this weekend's action at Homestead Miami Speedway. But before we hop into it, just want to remind you guys really quickly to hit that subscribe button if you aren't subscribed. We greatly appreciate it. And you can also check out our social media pages, which are linked in the description. But let's go ahead and hop into the episode. And as always, I have my friend and co-host Matthew joining me on the show, and we have to unpack this penalty. Bubba Wallace was handed out. We're going to go through all the details of what happened. We're going to even compare it to some other incidents that have happened. So Matthew, how are you feeling this week as we talk about this penalty, but also talk about what's going to go on at Homestead Miami the Speedway this weekend?
Man, I gotta give a shout out to a lot of these paint scheme designers who work on these cars for this week, because man, you're gonna see some of the best paint schemes of the year this weekend from all three series. You know why? Because we're going to pretty much almost everyone's favorite city, my favorite city, Miami, the 305. I mean, it is just amazing down there, the South Beach. Of course, the best. My favorite city happens to have like everyone's favorite mile-and-a-half racetrack there, Homestead Miami Speedway. So it's gonna be a fun weekend, especially with how good the mile-and-a-halves have been in the Cup Series this year. I expect the best mile-and-a-half track on the schedule to perform amazing with this car.
Yeah, we're going to talk about our favorite paint schemes later on as we talk about Homestead. But first of all, we are going to break down this Bubba Wallace penalty. So NASCAR suspended Bubba Wallace for one race for the retaliation against Kurt Busch on the racetrack at Las Vegas.
Did it
NASCAR.
say Kurt Busch?
I probably did. Yeah, I wrote Kurt Busch on my notes. Oh my gosh! Wow, what? Wow, it's one of those days, folks. It's one of those days. Wow.
You mean it's been back-to-back videos since we've heard a blooper from the man across the table here.
Yeah, that's two in a row.
They just called me saying you might have to go back to high school now.
Wow. Okay. Well, now I'm gonna restart. NASCAR suspended Bubba Wallace for one race for retaliating against Kyle Larson at Las Vegas. 2311 posted on their social media that they pretty much agreed with what NASCAR did, and Bubba posted something on social media as well, apologizing for what he did. He didn't specifically say what he did, but after he did that, I was like, yeah, he's probably going to get suspended for doing it, because he kind of admitted it, but didn't admit it at the same time. But that was the penalty, and there's people on social media going crazy about this. Some people are like he should have been suspended more races. Some people are saying that the penalty is too harsh. Some people are even going to the extent of, throwing the color of his skin in there, which is absolutely ridiculous. And I do want to quickly call out NASCAR social media. I know it's probably not you guys watching the videos, but there's people out there, they're just really dumb with what they're saying and accusing NASCAR of being racist and all kinds of crazy things. It's just unacceptable. So, I mean, it's probably not you guys, but, just be accountable for other people out there that may be saying some really dumb things on social media. But that has nothing to do with why Bubba Wallace got penalized. It had to do with clearly what he did on the racetrack. Like, Steve O'Donnell even said that it didn't have anything to do with him shoving Kyle Larson or touching an official or any of that stuff. It was just purely for the race incident where he wrecked Kyle Larson under the green flag condition. So I'm going to compare this really quick to some other penalty or other incidents that have happened. Some that have resulted in penalties was Kyle Busch. He wrecked Ron Hornaday under caution at Texas in the Truck Series, and he was fined $50,000. And he was also not allowed to compete in the Xfinity or Cup races that weekend, and he was placed on probation for the rest of the season. Matt Kenseth, he wrecked Joey Logano at Martinsville in the Cup Series, and he was suspended for 2 races for that. And then there were some incidents with no suspension, but there should have been. First one that came to my mind was Carl Edwards. He wrecked Brad Keselowski at Atlanta and Gateway in the same season, actually. And for the Atlanta incident, which was arguably worse because Brad Keselowski literally went like flying through the air and hit the wall, there was a 3 race probation for that, and he was parked for the rest of the race. Probation, that's it. And then when he wrecked him at Gateway, it was a 60-point penalty and a $25,000 fine for Carl Edwards. That should have, obviously, both of those should have been a suspension, honestly. Probably more the Atlanta one than the Gateway, but that happened. And Jeff Gordon, he wrecked Clint Bowyer at Phoenix. There was a 25-point penalty there, and he was fined $100,000. And as a Jeff Gordon fan, he probably should have gotten suspended for the final race of the season. I will admit that, because Clint Bowyer was in the hunt for a championship, and Jeff Gordon did take that away from him. So I will admit that. Am I glad that they didn't suspend him? Yes, I'm very glad, because he won next week at Homestead. But should he have gotten suspended? Probably.
The fact that it wasn't just because Jeff Gordon took out a championship contender. Clint Bowyer at the time was literally single digits of a gap from winning a championship, and he got taken out for that. I still don't get to this day. I think I know the reason why, but of course, you've heard me talk too much. You heard me say a lot of times with biasm, but yeah. Hey, you gotta sell those tickets somehow. If Jeff Gordon's not in the race, then you're not gonna sell a lot of tickets. So that's just how it is. But you can't really fault NASCAR for it.
All right, and then there's a few more I did want to briefly discuss before getting to my overall opinion on this. So there were some incidents with no suspension that didn't deserve one, in my opinion. Noah Gragson, he wrecked Sage Karam at Road America earlier this year. That was a 30-point penalty and a $35,000 fine. I believe the fine probably should have been a little higher, maybe the points penalty a little bit higher as well. And then the whole William Byron thing, wrecking Denny Hamlin under caution at Texas. He was originally docked 25 points, but those were given back. But a fine did get increased to $100,000. This is kind of a weird one because NASCAR should have handled it in the middle of the race, and they didn't do that. But I don't think a suspension was worthy there. So my overall opinion on this whole suspension for Bubba. I think this was the right decision for NASCAR to suspend him for one race. I think a little bit more should have been added, whether a fine was thrown in there, a points deduction was put in there, or he should have been suspended for the rest of the season. Those are kind of my options. I think one race isn't enough without a little bit more added to it. But like I said, Matt Kenseth, he got suspended 2 races for wrecking Joey Logano at Martinsville. This is honestly more or worse than that in my opinion, so I think he should be suspended for the rest of the season, but I do think they at least got it right for suspending him for one race. But at the same time, yes, he retaliated, and retaliation is not cool at tracks like this, but I do think NASCAR needs that kind of drama between the drivers, but there is a certain line. There was the whole boys have at it thing back in the early to late 2000s where NASCAR's like, yeah, we're going to let the drivers handle it on the racetrack, and we kind of saw how that went with Carl Edwards and Brad Keselowski, and that didn't really go that well. So my overall opinion about, wrecking the cars and all kinds of stuff, NASCAR should let the drivers handle it, but step in when necessary, like what they did this weekend with Bubba Wallace. Like driving through someone, hooking them into the wall, absolutely shoving them into the wall with no care in the world, that should be clearly worth a suspension, in my opinion. But, bumping into someone or spinning them out at a short track like Martinsville or Richmond or something, I don't think that should be worthy of a suspension. Maybe a small penalty, depending on how bad it is. Maybe a points or a fine, depending on how bad the incident is. But I think, if Denny Hamlin goes into Martinsville and spins out Ross Chastain, I don't think that should be worth a penalty. As long as he doesn't, door slam him like Matt Kenseth did to Joey Logano, I don't think that should be a penalty. I think that's, just racing, and that's a payback, But I think when, the cars are absolutely destroyed, you throw safety in there, the cars get absolutely taken out of the race, they don't have a chance to continue racing, I think that's kind of where NASCAR needs to draw that line. I know it's really hard for them to do that, but I think that's where they should draw that line. I'm not NASCAR, so I don't know, but that's just my opinion. But yeah, like Dale Earnhardt, he roughed people up all the time. in the 80s, 90s, whatever, spun him out on purpose, wrecked people for the win. He hardly ever got penalized for it. So I think that's good for NASCAR. I think they should keep it on the short tracks, not on mile and a halfs or road courses or anything like that. But I think NASCAR needs this drama, but they do need to draw a line and step in and penalize and suspend drivers when necessary. I do think NASCAR needs to lean more towards suspending drivers now, especially with the next gen car and the safety issues and concerns. So hopefully we don't have to talk about this again. But I do think NASCAR needs to step in and suspend drivers, not just fine them and penalize them points. Well, points hit or miss, depends on the driver and the situation. Kind of like William Byron, the points really matter to him. But I think NASCAR needs to step in and suspend drivers more often to really draw that line and say, hey, we can't have people right rear hooking people in the wall at a mile and a half racetrack. So that's just my quick opinion on everything that came out. But yeah, Matthew, what are your thoughts about?
Alright, so, of course, Bubba Wallace got the 1 race suspension, which in our previous video, I called for that. I said 1 race suspension is totally fine by me, because that is what is deserving. And, well, I was right. And I think this will be absolutely enough to show Bubba Wallace that, hey, you can't be doing that again, no matter how emotional you get, how easily emotional you can get, because they're going to suspend you. And I hope this is the beginning of NASCAR being more strict. Now, like I said in the previous video also, I do not want NASCAR to be like Formula 1 with their ticky-tacky sensitive penalties over any type of contact. Like, you spin someone, that's a penalty. You purposely bump into someone, that's a penalty. Don't go too far on that. But when it's clearly obvious, like Bubba Wallace did, wrecking someone in a high-speed track and in a wall, then yeah, that should be automatic suspension. I mean, you can even argue the Byron Hamlin situation. Byron should have probably been suspended, but he didn't. But I mean, well, mostly because that was under caution, where safety vehicles on the racetrack. I mean, God forbid, what if there was a safety vehicle on the front stretch when Hamlin was spinning? Then we'd be talking about a whole different story here. So, I mean, I feel like just purposely spinning someone under caution, wrecking someone on purpose, I mean, that should be automatic suspension. I mean, you saw what Kyle Busch at Texas, that was a suspension. Matt Kenseth in Martinsville, that was a suspension. I mean, this was controversial anyways, because NASCAR has been inconsistent with this. I mean, just look at Carson Hocevar at IRP this year. He purposely spun Colby Howard. That was a short track, I know, but he purposely wrecked him on the front stretch. Coming back across the track, you would think that would be a suspension. He actually didn't get a single penalty for that, fun fact, which that was ridiculous. Of course, the most memorable one that was controversial was Jeff Gordon, Clint Bowyer, Phoenix. I still don't get how he didn't get suspended for that. I literally don't know how. Other than that, he is Jeff Gordon, one of the all-time greats. If you suspend him, you're not going to get anyone in the crowd, apparently. So, that was more NASCAR trying to get more tickets in for the next race, in my opinion. But it is what it is, in the past. But NASCAR has been inconsistent with this in the past, and I hope this is the start of being more consistent with this. Like, these young drivers like Noah Gragson, Ty Gibbs, for example, a lot of these kids don't really care anymore. They didn't grow up in an era where a lot of the teams back in like the 80s, the 70s, they only had like 1 or 2 cars the whole season. They didn't have like 8, 9 cars like total in the garage like they do now. So it basically gives these kids now, like, hey, if I get mad, I don't care. We got another car good to go for the next race. So NASCAR gotta start getting these kids' heads here that you can't mess around in this sport. I mean, it is dangerous. I know with next gen that's even multiplied, but even before the next gen, it's still dangerous. I mean, so the call was absolutely right. I just hope NASCAR, continues being more consistent with this, and I mean, I hope Bubba Wallace does learn from this. I mean, I know Bubba Wallace. I mean, I was actually surprised Bubba Wallace even got a suspension. To be honest, I was expecting just a points penalty because, like I was talking about the whole Jeff Gordon thing. Bubba Wallace. It doesn't matter what you think about him, especially those idiots on social media. Um, think he is still one of the most popular drivers in NASCAR, especially outside the sport. He's well known outside NASCAR to a lot of people, and I'm actually surprised NASCAR, actually suspended him. So, I mean that. I mean, I just hope Bubba Wallace does learn for this. And John Hunter Nemechek will be driving the 45 this weekend, and this is a good audition for him because I think in the future he will be in one of those Gibbs cars when Hamlin or Truex retires one day. I think Nemechek will be in one of those Gibbs rides, so this will be a good audition for him for this weekend. See how good he will be. He has raced in the Cup Series before, but not really in the really good equipment. 2311 is good equipment compared to front row. So yeah, hopefully they're going to be talking about this a lot this weekend at Homestead and the pre-race stuff. But hopefully after this weekend, it'll all calm down. We can get the season done, and then hit the reset button because the last month or two. And it's just been controversy after controversy after controversy. I'm just waiting for Homestead for just someone to win and be disqualified, basically. So I'm waiting for that now, having a playoff driver winning Homestead. Next thing you know, they get disqualified for post-race inspection. So hopefully this is it for controversies this year, but I highly doubt it. So yeah, it's been a crazy month for NASCAR, but I do feel for Bubba Wallace. So I'll say this real quick. I don't want to touch up on this too much because if you talk anything, outside the sport, it turns controversial here. That's just how it is. But, I mean, even though Bubba Wallace did something really stupid, there's no reason to, get really personal, in certain areas. I'll quote here. I won't get into specifics, but you'll know what I'm talking about. And most of the time, it's just those fools eating chicken pot pies on their bellies with their in their grandmother's basement, basically type on that keyboard all day long. So I feel for Bubba Wallace for that part, even though he did something really stupid. Just just don't get so personal about it. I mean, jeez. But, that's the internet. It's never going to be kind. So you just might as well have to get used to it because it's never going to change. And
yeah, I feel for Bubba as well.
It's never going to get better.
He has to deal with a lot of haters out there too. But yeah, you and I, we're just judging everything based on the track actions. We're not judging him based on anything else. And nobody else should either. No, people should just, look at the incident and be like, yeah, he intentionally wrecked somebody. He should be a suspension. That's it. I wish it was that simple, but unfortunately some people aren't simple like that, and they have a lot more to say rather than just that. But we're going to talk about Homestead now. I'm going to show you guys the playoff grid really quick, and then I'll talk about a few of these cool paint schemes that we have. So as we look at the playoff grid, Joey Logano is already advanced to the championship 4, and Ross Chastain and Chase Elliott are 18 and 17 points above the cut line, and then it gets pretty close after that. Hamlin plus 6, Byron minus 6, Briscoe minus 9, Blaney minus 11, Christopher Bell in a pretty deep hole minus 23 after Las Vegas. Yeah, it's going to be a great weekend. Wondering what we're going to see. as a Chase Elliott fan, I'm a tiny bit nervous. Hopefully, he can have somewhat a decent run and go into Martinsville with a decent points lead, but we shall see. William Byron, he was really good at Homestead. Last time they went there, he won there. Denny Hamlin, he's really good at Homestead. So it'll be interesting to see if one of those drivers near or below the cut line can win or gain a lot of points on the field. I'm also going to be looking at Tyler Reddick, Christopher Bell. Christopher Bell could win at Homestead. That seems like one of his type of racetracks. Kyle Larson as well. So a lot of, dirt track kind of highline racers. I'm going to be looking at them all weekend long. But as for these paint schemes, I'm going to start off with the Xfinity Series, actually. Joe Graff Jr. is going to be driving the number 7 Bucked Up Energy Ford Mustang. And the 07, and wow, that car looks so good. It's got the blue and the pink, the Miami colors, with some palm trees on there. Really nice looking car. Let me see through the list. I have them right here. John Hunter Nemechek is going to be driving a number 45 Columbia Toyota with a huge fish on the side of it. That looks really cool. Cole Custer, he's driving Dixie Vodka Mustang with the all wild colors and palm trees on there. And then Austin Dillon he's driving the Huck Chevrolet with a pink fish on the side, blue palm trees, really nice looking car. I don't really know what my favorite is out of these, to be honest with you. I'm probably going to have to say the 07 Xfinity car. That's probably my favorite. But Matthew, what do you have to say about Homestead and schemes and anything else before you finish this video out?
Of course, that number 3 car has to be the best paint scheme for me. Perfect. As for drivers I'm looking forward for this weekend, I gotta look at the Toyotas again this weekend. I mean, they've always been very good at a mile and a half this year. I don't see any exception, especially Christopher Bell, who really needs a redemption after, getting taken out in that whole scrum that happened last week, which he did not deserve to be in. I feel like he should be in the championship 4. So I'm not counting Christopher Bell out. It's not over for him, and he's gonna run well this weekend. Also, Tyler Reddick, he's gonna be amazing this weekend, and Kyle Larson. I will keep an eye on the Penske cars though, because it seemed like Penske has caught up with the Gibbs cars with the mile and a halves, especially last week. I mean, all 3 of their cars ran really well this past weekend with Logano winning, so I expect the same thing happen this weekend. But maybe with Ryan Blaney taking the win this time. So I'm going to keep an eye on those.
All right. Yeah, it's going to be a wild weekend at Homestead. Really good racing, hopefully. But make sure you guys stay tuned. Our review video will be out next week, talking about everything that happens. We're also in an iRacing league. Maybe I'll drop the link to the stream down in the description so you guys could take a look at that. We'll be racing Friday night at New Hampshire, so if you guys are interested in watching that, maybe I'll leave the link down below for that. But yeah, make sure you guys stay tuned to our social media channels for updates throughout the weekend, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.